Today, I'm going to break down guitar compression for you in a way that's super easy to understand so you can start using it in your guitar playing right away. Hey everyone, Al Tahira here. Today we're diving deep into one of the most powerful but often misunderstood effects for guitar, compression. So, you're confused by knobs like threshold, ratio, attack, or even just sustain on your pedals? They can sound scary, but once you understand the words, it's really not that hard at all. We'll break it all down using the studio compressor as our guide so that you can understand any of the large array of pedal compressors and use them effectively on your guitar. This is for anybody that wants to grasp an understanding of compressors no matter what pedals they own, because I'm going to discuss the differences between some of the simpler pedals and the more complex pedals. But once you understand the more complex pedals, the simpler pedals are just that much easier. So what is compression? Compression is simply like an automatic volume control that lowers the loud parts of your playing and raises the soft parts of your playing so that the dynamic range gets squeezed into a smaller space. That, in essence, is what a compressor does. The way to imagine this is there's a tiny mixing engineer robot that's inside this little box. And he's got certain rules that he's got to follow to raise and lower the volume. That's his only job. Okay, so why use a compressor on a guitar? Well, the first main benefit is increased sustain. Making notes ring out louder and longer, especially clean tones, because dirty tones we can do that. But with clean tones, this is the way to do it. It just makes it last longer. You can even out dynamics, makes finger picking, chicken picking, or inconsistent picking sound more uniform. And it pops out the softer stuff too, so that it comes out as loud as the more harsher dynamics. It adds punch and snap, shaping the transients of the note, often for clean or country tones. It helps leveling. It makes the soft parts louder and the loud parts softer, so that a consistent perceived volume. This is great for playing live and maintaining the mix. And the last one is as an effect. Heavy compression can squash the sound quite a bit to where it sounds a little bit unusual, and it gives you an interesting effect for your sound. Okay, let's look at the controls that you'll find on a full-featured compressor, because understanding these unlocks everything. All right, the first word we're going to talk about is threshold, and that's this knob over here on the left. And threshold is just a word that means when that little robot guy, what volume level does he start doing his thing by turning down your sound? And normally he leaves the knob just plain gain, whatever you had before. But as soon as you get over this level here, then that point is when we actually start to kick in the compressor. So the lower that we have it, the quicker and earlier we hit the compression level. And over here, this guy right here, you can see that it's going down, and that's basically that little robot turning down the sound every time that we go up above this threshold up here. So if you notice that when the bars on the left go up, the bar on the right goes down, and it only happens when we get past that threshold level that we've set. And if we raise that, then you can see that we're reducing the volume less, and if we turn that even higher, you can see that we're barely getting any compression at all, because we're basically below the level where we're going to start reducing the volume. So that's the threshold. Okay, next I want to introduce the term ratio. Now, this ratio is this number over here, and right now I've got it set to 4.0 to 1. And what that means is that for every 4 decibels of increase in sound, the volume is only going to increase by 1 decibel. So that's like a 4-to-1 dB ratio. So if I turn this up, you can see that that's actually lowering the ratio. So if it's a 1-to-1, it'll turn into a straight line. So whatever goes in comes out. But if I have, like, say, a 7-to-1 ratio, you notice that this is where the threshold's set. And every time you go 7 decibels above, you only have increased by 1. And so this line is a lot slower of a slope. And so this gives you the maximum amount of compression, and we can increase this thing till we get to very large numbers, in which case this is called limiting. Limiting is like a flat line, and anything above that, it's set to infinity now, that is a perfectly flat line. So as soon as we get to this level, the volume will be maintained exactly the same until it gets below that point. So this is, if you've heard of limiters, compressors can turn into limiters when you have the ratio set up really high. But that is just the amount of compression that gets kicked in, or the reduction in volume. It expresses a ratio. And typically 4-to-1 is what's considered average amount. Anything below that is a light amount of compression, which is when you don't want it to really sound like a compressor is running. And then anything harder than that is when you want to really aggressively reduce the signal. Okay, so the next knob that we have to learn about is called the attack. And what the attack actually is the speed that that little robot has to turn the knob as soon as you go above the threshold. So the faster the attack, or the less milliseconds on this particular guy, and this one actually goes all the way down to 0, as you can see here, then the more instantaneous. So basically it's going and reducing the volume instantly after the threshold gets passed. But if we add a little bit of time, then we tell the robot to just wait a few milliseconds. Let's go to 30. And what that does is it gives it some time before he starts bringing down the gain, so that the basic picking comes through a little bit, at least the first 30 milliseconds here. So doesn't sound as compressed, but it still gives you the sustain. Okay, so the next word and knob that we're going to talk about is called release, and that's this one down here at the bottom. This is simply how quickly the compressor, or the little robot, stops reducing the gain after the signal falls back below the threshold. So as the note is dying, when it gets below the threshold, this will wait and add a little bit of extra time. Now 50 milliseconds is considered fairly low, or anything less than that. But as you, and the reason is because below 50 milliseconds, the compressor tends to sound energetic or pumpy. A slow release of, say, 1 to 15 seconds holds the compressor on longer, sounding smoother, and potentially in simpler compressions. This is actually fixed. But here's, say 2,000 milliseconds or thereabouts. This is 2 seconds after we go below the threshold. Looking over here at this column here, I've got it set to 2 seconds now, and if I may have a really quick transient, you can see it takes 2 seconds for this to go back up. Whereas if I got this set fast on the release, it goes back up instantly. Okay, so the last important adjustment that we have on a compressor, if you can see here, there's the word gain, and this is called makeup gain. And what makeup gain does is, we've been talking about this little robot lowering the volume when we get above the threshold. So since he's lowering the volume, and especially the more we tell him by adjusting the ratio higher, the more we tell him to lower the volume, the lower the overall volume comes out. And so we have this gain to basically make up gain for the losses that we've had. So if we lower this, so here's 0, and this is where there's no makeup gain. And so you're seeing that by having all this reduction in volume, we don't have a lot of volume. So let's bypass it so you can hear the difference. This is raw coming through. And then this is the compressor. So the makeup gain adds a few more decibels so that we can bring it back up to where we had it. Now the key point that I want to bring up here is that in simpler compressors, there are usually 2 knobs, sometimes even 1, but there's usually just 1 knob that says compressor, and the other one just says level. And the compressor knob tries to make it really easy on the guitar player. And this may be the kind of compressor that you want if you're not really going to get seriously into sculpting your sound. And what it does is that it's actually a combination threshold and makeup gain. And they're balanced out so that pretty much the compressor stays at the same level as you turn the knob up or down. As you turn the knob to the right, you increase the sustain, which is lowering the threshold, while simultaneously making up gain, so that you never feel like you have to adjust the makeup gain, and then that way you've eliminated that knob. Now in these devices, they are simpler, so that the attack and the release are set to some unknown values, probably something midline, so that it sounds good in most applications. So you don't have the exact same control, but it does allow you to just simplify everything into 1 knob. Okay, bridging the gap, studio controls versus guitar pedals. Okay, so how does this relate to the simpler knobs on your guitar pedal? First off, the sustain knob. This is, like I mentioned earlier, this is the 1 knob that typically lowers the threshold and compressing the signal more. Then we have the level or volume knob. It's almost always a direct makeup gain. Then we have the attack knob. This is just like the studio attack. This is in the more advanced compressors on the market. Sometimes the attack knob is just a switch, fast or slow. Okay, then we have the compression and ratio knob. These are sometimes present to control the ratio on some of the more advanced pedals, but often the ratio is fixed internally on the simpler pedals. Again, usually around 4 dB is kind of a typical average, 4 to 5 dB. Another optional knob that you may find on some guitar compressors is called a tone knob, and this is simply an EQ control. This is not a core compression parameter, but sometimes when you compress, it does take away a little bit of the highs, and so this can restore some of that back. Another knob that is optional that you may see is called the blend knob. This mixes the compressed signal with the dry signal, the dry signal being the raw guitar coming into the compressor with the compressed output of the guitar. And you can adjust the amount of blend between the raw and the processed sound to get a little bit of a variation and bring some of that liveliness still through, even though in general it's compressed. This is also called parallel compression, and you may hear that terminology in the more advanced units. But now the key takeaway here is that even with fewer knobs, the same underlying principles of threshold, ratio, attack, release, and gain are still at play. It's just sometimes they're combined or the values are fixed. So that's the only difference. Okay, I'm going to put together a couple of examples here. I've actually created a whole list, and I will put a link to that list in the description below so that you can download a free copy of it. And it'll give you, for all the different genres, rock, blues, metal, jazz, country, and even some bass guitar settings as well, so that you can get a rough idea of where to start. And of course, using your ear is the best judgment here, because you want it to sound like what you want it to sound like. But this will get you in the ballpark for the different types of music and what's normally used, which is probably what you're accustomed to hearing. So let's start out by just a few of these. I'm not going to go through the whole list, just to keep the video short and concise. Okay, so the first one I'm going to demo is rock. So we're going to reduce the threshold by between 3 to 4 dB. It's a pretty modest amount. I tend to go a little bit heavier, but it all depends on how loud your original guitar signal is. You know, if you've got your volume down a little bit on your guitar, or the sensitivity of your compressor is lower, then these numbers may change. But basically, you just want a little bit of compression just at the loudest parts, not through the whole thing. And then the attack, you want to set it to between 15 to 30 milliseconds. So I've got this set to about 20. And the release, we want to set it between 100 and 500. We want to set the ratio to about 2 to 1 or 4 to 1. I'm just going to leave it at 4 to 1. And then we put enough makeup gain so that we come back out at about the same volume. So. So let's just cover blues a little bit. So the blues shows a little bit more of a threshold, going more extreme, down to about 5-6 dB. And then we want to have the attack roughly the same, maybe a little less. So let's just go to as low as 10. And then we want the release can go a little bit less too. It can go anywhere from 50 to 500. Let's try it a little bit at 50. We want to set the ratio a little higher than 4, up to 6. So let's just go to 6. Let's see what that sounds like. This should give us an enhanced sustain, some performance, level performances, and higher end for lead. Notice that when you want to set the threshold to the recommended here of about minus 3 to 5 decibels, what you want to do is, in this particular studio compressor, we see this little yellow line here that lingers for just a second, and when we hit it hard, it's at minus 4 dB. So we want to start the compression about 5 dB or so below that. So somewhere right around 12 or 9, that's where we want to set that at. If we're, consistently picking that hard. Okay, the last one I'm going to demo today is a little bit of country here. So for country, we want to go about, again, 4 to 10 decibels now below where we peak at. So then we want to go to an attack setting between 10 and 20. I've got it set at 10. We want to have release time between 50 to 250 milliseconds. I've got it set to about 50. And we want to have about anywhere from 2.1 to 6.1 decibel ratio. So the ratio I've got set to 6 to 1. And so this will allow you to balance the volume, increase the presence, and the higher ratio gives you a slower attack for chicken picking and things like that for country. So let's see what this is going to sound like. All right, in this section, I'm going to talk about quick tips and common pitfalls. The first important tip is to start subtly. It's very easy to overcompress. The recommendations that I gave you are just starting points. So just start there and use your ear. Try to get in your mind what the effect that you're trying to get or the type of genre you're trying to replicate. And it's mostly a feeling thing as well. So you want to just adjust and listen. You also want to listen for unwanted noise. Compression raises the noise floor. Never put the compressor after a distortion pedal because you're just going to get a lot of noise. It's just not good practice. Typical placement would be to start early in the chain, usually after a wah-wah, because wah-wahs tend to vary the volume output quite a bit, so you want to contain that. A/B test consistently against your bypass tone. So you want to listen to it, and you want to listen to it without the effect. So that way you can get a feeling for what exactly is the right amount. So to recap briefly, we have 5 main controls. We have the threshold, we have the ratio, we have attack, we have release, we have makeup gain, and we have the concept of a sustain knob in the simpler pedals. You now have the knowledge to understand what your compressor is doing, whether it's a fancy Studio Unit 1 or a simple 2-knob pedal. Did this clear things up? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear from you guys. What are your favorite compressor settings? What is your favorite compressor? If you found this useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more guitar tips and deep dives in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please click in one of these links if you want to see another video that's recommended for you. And we thank you so much for joining us today. And remember to keep playing.